Good afternoon. Why don't we start this work session? Oh, the saga of the chairs continues. All right. Why don't we why don't we call up Mr. Steve Walsh, Director, Department of Public Works. If the council could turn to the addendum, fiscal matter 7, which is the purchase order. And good afternoon, Mr. Walsh, our favorite snow plower. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. We're excited to come today to talk about a contract related to the Towson Circulator project. And I know that this project was discussed by the executive and certainly a big part of what the executive is pushing on the transportation side. I know you all have heard about the $1.65 million grant award from the federal government for this project for some infrastructure and buses. And that was very exciting. I want to acknowledge the work of Sam Sneed and Greg Karski in traffic for that. And this contract, we're requesting approval of a contract with Sabra and Associates to update the 2015 circulator feasibility study and develop a final route plan. The scope of the study basically is to develop final route plan proposals, ridership estimates, operating costs, and there's a public outreach component to this proposal as well. Contract would commence upon council approval and continue till the end of the project, and we estimate that around June 30th, and the cost of this is $50,900. Now, the vendor was selected through 902F process. They were the original vendor who did the original feasibility study for MTA, and to us it made sense that they would continue and basically revise that prior study for us.
Councilman Marks?
Well, we finally got here. Thank you, Mr. Walsh, for testifying. It's been somewhat of a lonely crusade at times for the Towson Circulator, but now we have all the support in place to advance this critical project for downtown Towson. I'd like to circulate to my colleagues a resolution passed on September 21st, 2015, in which the council unanimously supported a pilot program for downtown Towson to have this type of service. I want to thank the county executive for his robust support for this project. I want to thank the Greater Towson Committee, which initiated a study several years ago, but also the Towson Chamber of Commerce, the Towson Communities Alliance, who have been steadfast supporters of this initiative. The circulator is critical to improving mobility in downtown Towson, particularly as the development in downtown Towson reaches its peak over the next year. I think this will be a terrific service for our citizens, and wholeheartedly support this contract.
Councilman Patoka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilman Marks, let me just say that I'm really excited for you and for the residents of your district for this step in initiating the Towson Circulator. I think this is a major step in transitioning Baltimore County from being a minor league county in terms of transit into a major league county in terms of transit. And we're going to get there, and I'm really excited about the first step that you've taken in Towson.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for your support.
I know we do have 2 public speakers, but are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Walsh or Councilman Marks? I would just echo that as well. I think we all agree, and I think it's a big win for Towson. I still think that the state of Maryland dropped the ball completely when we walked away from the red line, which I thought would have really helped the county. And so anything we can do to move in a direction like this, I think really makes a lot of sense. So I did want to thank you, Mr. Walsh, and I guess we'll go to our public speakers.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could, there is something in the forecast, but I think we'll be okay for tomorrow, so. just
All righty. Hey, and please send our sincere appreciation to all the men and women out there that are, when it does snow, they're working around the clock, so we do really, really greatly appreciate it.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Chair,
Walsh.
Mr. Chair, I'd
Councilman
like to
Kadoka.
make a comment on what you said related to the red line. I agree with you. When the red line was canceled, it was a major punch in the gut to Baltimore County's economy, Baltimore City's economy, the regional economy. If you don't have transport to a job, you do not have a job. And many people, when the decision was made to cancel the red line, the idea that we'd have jobs for the residents of this region just took, like I said, a major punch in the gut. So I'm really pleased that you acknowledged that poor decision that was made in terms of transit for the region.
All righty, thank you. And then we do have two public speakers. Each speaker is allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. These are two of our very active citizens. First up is Mr. Paul Hartman, and then next up is Nancy Hafford. And we do appreciate your work, Mr. Hartman, and Nancy as well. I mean, you guys are very engaged citizens, so you definitely make a big difference. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the members of the council. I'll be brief because you've heard the arguments that we can't build more roads in Towson. We can't make the ones we have bigger without extreme disruption. And this circulator project will be a great boon to the area, the county, as well as Towson. So I'm here representing Towson Communities Alliance, and we wholeheartedly support this project, and thank you for considering it and moving it forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hartman.
Thank you, Paul.
Our next speaker is Nancy Hafford.
I remember when David started this back in 2015. I felt back then it was a little premature, but now is the right time. There's so much going on here in Towson. We're going to have over couple thousand new people moving into the area. We have Towson Town Center. People don't realize that Towson Town Center gets over 10 million visits there a year. That's a lot of bodies that are going there. Towson Cinemark is a global movie theater, and it's one of the top 5% globally. That's how busy it is. So I'm very fortunate not just to be the director of the Chamber of Commerce, but I live here in Towson, so I'm here pretty much 24/7 unless I'm down in Florida enjoying myself, but we won't talk about that, or vacationing with some of our council women. We won't talk about that either. So this is the time for the circulator to come around. A lot of residents in the area ask about it. So we have events that bring 500,000 people into Towson, and we're going to be adding more events. We've got this beautiful park that our Lake County executive started years ago, Patriot Plaza. Would like to start having more activities over there. So we're very, very grateful for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. All righty. Moving right along. If the council could turn to page 1, Bill 65-19, Dr. Branch. Community-based programs. Page 1. If we have our pages all correct here. And good afternoon, Dr. Branch.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, Council. The administration is requesting a supplemental appropriation of federal funds totaling $85,261 for our community program to test and cure hepatitis C. As you may know, hepatitis C is the #1 cause of liver cancer and liver transplants. You can get hepatitis C from contaminated blood, from tattoo needles, and from sex. So this program is allowing us to hire some staff to do case management, so we can get out and do surveillance of hepatitis C, a lot of testing. I am very pleased to say now in 2019 that there is treatment for hepatitis C. Historically, we've had some interferon, which was a nasty, nasty medication that you had to get by injections, and only 50% of the people would actually, if they could tolerate it, would actually be cured. But we now have pills that people can take. We have a very, very high cure rate for hepatitis C. And so now we have to get the word out, get people tested so that we can put them on the medications for only like 12 weeks. And then they could be cured from that, and it prevents them from getting the liver cancer. So I'm excited.
Councilman Patoka?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Branch, is Hep C, is it a disease that impacts people of certain age cohorts?
Okay. So at one time, we thought the baby boomers was a
Yes,
big
that's what I
group,
thought.
right? And that is true, and that was true. And that was basically people were getting it because of tattoos and sex, blah, 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 blah. Now what we're seeing is that now the younger population is getting it also at this point now. So that's what we're really trying to push it out there. So yes, the baby boomers, it was silent for them, but many of them would come down with cirrhosis and then subsequently have to have a liver transplant.
Councilman Jones?
How are you doing today, the good Dr. Branch?
I'm doing excellent, thank you.
Great, great. You know, that is terrific news to hear about Hep C, because I was sitting here thinking to myself how wonderful that is and how that's going to help an awful lot of people. And I was comparing it to the Towson Circulator. And I was just sitting here thinking, and I wanted to say something, but I chose to keep quiet. But I want to congratulate Councilman Marks because it was something that he's been pushing for a long time. Yeah. And he was pushing it when he was the only one standing there saying it. But he stuck with it, and he continued to push it, and now here we are. And I was just comparing it, and I was thinking about Hep C, and I was thinking, for years and years and years, there were no cure other than what you said. But people stuck with it. People came up with things, and I guess things changed, and here we are with some with a treatment that has a high cure rate. So thank you for sharing that information, Dr. Branch, and thank you, David Marks, for sticking with the circulator. Let me be the first to say I'm going to be working on a Owings Mills, downtown Owings Mills circulator next. I'll see how yours work out.
Here.
And I don't want to diminish the county. And I don't want to diminish the county executive support. I mean, there's been a real sea change in terms of transportation, and I think there's a lot of great things that are now possible. So, thank you.
Councilwoman Bevins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Dr. Branch. I just have a quick question. You stated that tattoo needles is one of the ways that hepatitis C is transmitted, I guess is the word I want to use. Are those, I want to call them tattoo parlors, is that, they still call them tattoo parlors? Or okay. Does the state oversee tattoo parlors like nail salons, and do they
Yes.
have inspections by the state?
Yes,
All of them?
yes.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know that.
Dr. Branch, one question. Did I hear right saying that Hep C is starting to increase with millennials? Did I hear that?
Yes.
What's behind that?
Well, basically what happens is the fact that it's just another bloodborne pathogen. So if you are in contact with contaminated blood, that will happen. So tattoos will actually do it. People do their own tattoos, and then also sex. And millennials have sex.
Is it mostly the tattoos, though, do you think? Or are they doing something
It's very
differently than
difficult. It's very
the Gen
difficult.
X's and baby boomers are doing?
It's very difficult to
I'm
determine.
just trying to isolate the problem here.
Okay. It's very difficult to determine exactly where a person would get hepatitis C due to the nature of what happens when you actually get it. So many people, most people, are asymptomatic. So we have to just go back by what they tell us in their history. So that's how we can kind of figure it out. But we're not very clear a lot of times. I can't, if you're a person who has a tattoo, but you're also sexually active, I can't say exactly where you got it from.
Definitely millennials have a lot more. Some millennials that I know have 15 or 20 different tattoos and tattoo parlors are like popping up all over the county, and so.
But remember,
I'm just purely.
Let me be very clear on something. As long as the tattoo parlors are cleaning their needles and disposing of the disposable needles and things, you're not going to have a problem with it at all. Unfortunately, if you go somewhere and they don't do that, then you're going to have a problem. So, right. So being in somebody's house or somebody's backyard in the basement somewhere, right, that's going to be a problem. So you got to be very, very mindful of what you do and get any type of procedure. Anytime you get anything where it's going to pierce the skin, which is the protective barrier that the Lord has given us, if you're going to, that is going to basically introduce infection. So you got to be very, very mindful of that.
That's interesting. Councilman Patoka?
Just for a point of clarity, that not all boomers have tattoos. So just let me say that.
But many do.
But many, okay. If you say so, you're the medical professional.
I think the difference between the boomers and some of the new millenniums, the boomers have it where you can't see it.
I see.
Okay.
Well,
Right.
For the millennials, and I have a few staff members over here, I'm comfortable having a tattoo discussion with them, but less comfortable having discussions with them about the other things you mentioned.
This is we need a little comic levity. Councilman Jones.
You know, Dr. Branch, I'm going to take a risk here. I'm not going to go too far, but you made the comment about millennials and some of their behavior.
I'm wondering honestly.
I thought about it, and I was going to jokingly say, with everything being done online nowadays, does it involve another person? But I am happy to say that according to the Center for Disease Control, the birth rates for women between the ages of 15 and 17 has fallen again by 10%. So we can infer that either our millennials are much smarter in terms of birth control, or they're having less activity that would lead to a birth. So that's a good thing, because of probably people such as yourself who are doing all the community awareness and education, prevention, and what have you. So thank you.
Did you have a comment on that?
I was just going to say a couple of things. We can have that conversation offline, Councilman Jones, as to the causes of that. And I will say that I understand what you're talking about online, but you can get a multiplicity of viruses online. You just can't get hepatitis C. Okay.
That is a good one. And I'm going to stop this conversation, but for sure there's been articles and research and everything else about millennials, and it's true that a lot of the young men are playing a lot more video games now than they used to. And I do think that is part of the decline of the birth rates going on, because I think there's a lot of guys that are playing a lot more video games than what, maybe our generations did. So I'll leave it there. Just leaving it there. All right. I didn't play any video games. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Dr. Branch? Everybody good? All right, let's go. Let's move forward. Jeez. Oh boy. Oh, that was fun. All right. Peter Gutwald, Council, want to turn to page 16, Fiscal Matter 4, ARC Environmental. Mr. Gutwald, page 16. Take us to a little less interesting topic here.
Hard to follow that act, huh? Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council. The administration is requesting approval of a contract with ARC Environmental, LLC, to provide testing and risk assessment services to determine if homes that are eligible for federally funded improvements contain lead paint hazards. This is, as you know, we run a single-family housing rehabilitation loan for income-eligible homeowners. As part of granting those loans, the federal government requires us to do lead and radon test and risk assessments. based on that before if the home is built prior to 1978. This is a one-year contract with 4-year additional periods that can be extended for a total of $232,000. We have been working with this group for about 8 to 10 years, consistently doing this type of work. Do about 95. This money will allow us to do about 95 units per year. I know it says $325 per hour. That is actually the cost is $325 per unit. That's not per hour. I would just make that note.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Gutwald? That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Page 11, Ms. Laura Riley, Director, Department of Aging. Page 11, Fiscal Matter 3. Page 11. And good afternoon, Ms. Riley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. I'm afraid mine is also quite boring, but the administration is requesting approval of a contract with for the Comforts of Home 3 to provide assisted living care for eligible county seniors age 62 and older, commencing December 16th, continuing through June 30th, and then it will become part of our regular cycle with assisted livings. And as I've mentioned before, the state has given us additional funding, and in order for us to spend that, we need to bring more assisted livings under contract with us.
Any questions, comments for Ms. Riley?
See, I knew it was boring.
Easy enough. Thank you. Thank you. Boring is good. Boring's good sometimes. All right. Deborah Schindel, Property Management, and this is on page 6. Council, turn to page 6. It's Fiscal Matter 1 and 2. So I don't know if you want to do both at the same time or however you want to do it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the council. Property Management is requesting the approval of a contract for Colossal Contracting, Inc. and Earn Contracting, 2 contractors that were selected for on-call painting. In this bid, it was bid through the BRCPC, and that stands for Baltimore Region Cooperative Purchase Committee. And to give you a little bit of information about how that came together, Baltimore County and Howard County actually joined forces. Both counties needed to put out an on-call for painting services, and we joined together, and the amount of work that we thought we would do in the county and the work that they thought they would do, and together we took that scope of work and put it out to bid so that it was a more competitive bid with a more volume involved. So we actually led the charge, but Howard County also is a partner in this endeavor. This is one of the national best practices as we move forward to sharing services with other counties and trying to get the best value for Baltimore County. This contract is for 1 year initial with 4 renewals at the same time. We also have, as you mentioned, the Tier 2 contract. So this was a tiered contract, Tier 1 and Tier 2. Tier 1 is for painting tasks up to $10,000, and Tier 2 contractor, where we only had one bidder, is for anything over $10,001. In that contract, they have to do the 25% MBE participation required for those tasks. In this total contract between all 3 contractors, in no event shall the combined compensation paid to all contractors exceed the amount for $4,651,689.12 during the term of this contract. And I do have some questions from the auditors. Would you like me to answer those?
Yeah, if you could just go through each of the
Okay.
questions. I know the council had a few.
Sure. This is, again, not an exciting contract as others are. It is a painting contract. The fiscal note indicated that the hourly rates for the county's current on-call painting contracts are less than the hourly rates for the county will pay under the new proposed contract. Why was the decision to rebid on-call painting services and enter into a new contract with higher rates in the light that the fact that we were getting basically lower rates than we are going to be paying now? So what happened is that with the two contractors that we were under contract with, both have pulled out. They no longer can afford to have a contract with the county. The pay rate for painters has gone up, and they were doing it so cheaply, they honestly were losing money doing it for the county. We actually talked to one of the contractors and kind of asked him to stay on with us until we put it out to bid again, and that's why we lost both of our contractors. So we had to do a new bid, and that new bid obviously now reflects a going rate in the painting industry and for labor rates. And it said, will property management obtain bids from the two Tier 1 contractors to determine specific project awards? Yes. For every job, we will bring them in and have both vendors give us two contracts, two prices, so that we can compare which one is a better one to go for Baltimore County. Why is it in the county's interest to award an on-call painting contract through the tiered process? I have to say, property management does not make that decision. Every contract, from what I understand, that is determined through the procurement review group in the purchasing. We don't make that. They look at every contract and say, we believe we can tier this, and then they come back and say, we're tiering it for you. So I guess they just assumed that there was enough work to actually tier. Please explain why there's only one contract for Tier 2. Tiers are established based on the nature of the contract and the dollar amount of the year's actual contract spent. That being said, the majority of the spending for the prior year's painting contract was actually below $25,000. Therefore, $10,000 was the best price break, as there were limit orders to exceeding $25,000 and over last year. This was reviewed by the PRG, and it was tweaked based on the nature of the solicitation and what we spent in the past. And the last question they had, why does the county website description of small business purchasing program for construction trades, including painting, reflect different parameters for the tiers? For example, Tier 1 is up to $24,999. Again, that is all defined by the peer review group that looks at the contract. And again, they look at the past spending, what has been spent, and kind of get the judge of where they can make the break on what's Tier 1 and Tier 2. Again, property management has nothing to do that. Purchasing comes back and gives us those definitions.
Mr. Blades.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add, as far as the tiered approach, the lower contract amount, the $10,000, is geared towards or targeted towards smaller businesses to help them gain experience with government contracts so that they can move on to a higher tier. So it's to help expand the opportunities to smaller businesses in the county.
Any questions or comments from the council? Do you have anything, Councilman Patoka? You good? Very good. All righty.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, now if we could call Mr. Richard Schenning from the Fire Director for the Fire Department, and if the council could turn to page 20. And why don't we do fiscal matter 5 and 6 together, if that's okay? And then open up for questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Department's requesting clinical agreements with two hospitals. That's the Johns Hopkins Bayview Hospital and the Northwest Hospital Center. These agreements are for the purpose of affording our paramedic students the opportunity to train in clinical experiences with patients of the sponsoring institutions and its faculty in order to complete their professional development and gain experience. Baltimore County currently has agreements in place with Shock Trauma, GBMC, Sinai, St. Joe's, MedStar Franklin Square, and Good Samaritan Hospitals for similar clinical experiences. Students are afforded the opportunity to work in areas of the hospital to gain clinical experience in pediatrics, emergency rooms, OB/GYN, and operating rooms. There's no funding involved in this agreement. It's a 5-year agreement.
Any questions or comments from the council? I think we're pretty good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Moving right along. How about our county auditor, Ms. Lauren Smelkinson, and the contract for Sage Policy Group, and that's the addendum.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the County Council. FM8 is a contract with Sage Policy Group to provide economic analysis, personal income forecasting, and discussion facilitation services for the Council's Spending Affordability Committee and the Council's Baltimore County Economic Advisory Committee. This is a 4-year contract. Compensation is limited to $25,600 over the 4-year term. Compensation is also limited to $1,600 per quarter. The contract was awarded through a competitive procurement process, and that was based on qualifications and price from 2 proposals that were received.
Any questions or comments from the council? All righty. Thank you, Ms. Smelkinson. Now, why don't we turn to page 4, Bill 66-19, Councilman Marks.
Thank you very much. As you know, renting to 3 or more unrelated people for compensation requires a boarding house use permit. We have found that there are some situations where landlords are not having to secure boarding house permits because they claim there is no compensation beyond the first or second unrelated tenant. This legislation tightens that loophole by stating that additional individuals, including where compensation is allegedly not involved, are counted toward the 3 or more unrelated person rule. So there was a rather extensive article in The Sun about this yesterday. I do want to add that since that article came out, I had conversations with the Maryland Multi-Housing Association, which represents the owners and managers of 73,000 units in Baltimore County, and they will not be taking any position on this bill.
Questions or comments for Councilman Marks? Everybody good on the council? Councilman Jones?
Yes, Councilman Marks. So, do I understand the way we're flipping it around now that we're putting the burden on the residents who live there to say whether or not people are renting to them or not?
So the residents always have to report these things, and code enforcement will follow up. It's not so much that we're flipping the burden. I actually think we're helping some of the residents because they claim that this practice is occurring. They still have to report it to code enforcement. Code enforcement will still investigate it.
Well, I guess I understand the issue that we're trying to fix. My only question is, I look at the way families live nowadays. A lot of times kids come back home because of other issues, and sometimes you have extended relatives or distant relatives living with you. So now I'm just curious if somebody sees somebody different coming in and out of my house. They call code enforcement. Now the burden is on me to prove that these people are not renting. Is that right?
Oh, when you say you, who are you
Me,
referring to?
the homeowner, the guy
homeowner.
who's the king of the castle.
Well, they file a complaint with code enforcement. Code enforcement follows up. And I think if you talk to the residents, they will tell you that code enforcement does a very thorough job, and many times code enforcement does take the side of the landlord. It's not a perfect process, as this bill reflects.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we do have 5 public speakers on this. Each public speaker is allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. I'll call your name if you come up to the speaker's desk. Our first public speaker is Paul Hartman, followed by Peter Mulder.
He's on the planning board.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair and Council. Again, I'm speaking on behalf of Towson Communities Alliance. We are in favor of Bill 6619. It's not news that some landlords find loopholes to circumvent the Baltimore County rental occupancy regulations. As stated, the limit is 2 unrelated adult tenants in single-family homes without a rooming house permit. Years ago, landlords would put tenants on the deed as 1% owners, claiming then we're then exempt from being counted as a tenant. And this council passed legislation requiring 50% ownership to be considered an owner. Then landlords claimed that residents were just visiting, even though they seemed to be present nearly all the time. This council passed legislation stating that visitors who live in the apartment for 30 days or more are to be considered residents. Landlords claim that they're related, they're cousins, and therefore don't count towards the limit. This council passed legislation that puts the burden of proof on the relationship on the landlord and tenants. Well, landlords created LLCs and made the tenants 1% owners of the LLC, again, to get around the limit. This council passed legislation that an LLC member must share in the profits of the LLC to be considered an owner. So the latest loophole claims that some tenants are not compensating the landlord for residing in the apartment, and therefore those residents do not count toward the occupancy limit. Although I find it hard to believe that landlords are allowing people to stay in their units for free, even if true, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter if rent is being paid or not. The intent of the law is to protect neighborhoods from over-rented single-family homes. Whether money is changing hands shouldn't be considered. This legislation would not prohibit more than 2 unrelated adult tenants. The county provides a process for owners to petition for a boarding house permit, which includes an administrative law judge hearing where testimony for and against can be presented. If this loophole is not closed, the door will be open for numerous unscrupulous landlords, many of whom own multiple properties, to ignore the occupancy limit. Therefore, ask that the county vote for Bill 6619. Thank you.
Councilman Jones?
Yes. Mr. Harbin, it's based on your presentation, it sounds like if this loophole is closed, there'll be another loophole. If history tells us anything.
We'll be here in a year or two with some other loophole, that's true, but it's like the boy with the dike and, finger in the dike. A whack-a-mole, another analogy. People are smart. Landlords are smart, and they'll find the next way to get around whichever regulation they don't like, and we'll just have to come up with a way to plug that hole, and we're asking you to take care of this particular loophole now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hartman.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Peter Mulder, followed by Randy Cooper. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. My name is Peter Mulder. I'm the president of the Associates of Lock Raven Village, which is the community association representing the 1,472 households in the Lock Raven Village community. We're here to lend our support to the bill. I suppose that we are kind of the center for the reason that the bill was introduced, in that there's a home right up the street from my home where there are 4 students living in the house, and when the case was referred to code enforcement, the landlord claimed to be not receiving any compensation for the students living there. Kind of hard to believe. Neighborhoods like ours, where the math works for these landlords, particularly to rent to students in the Towson area as Towson University is growing, our neighborhoods are being targeted for this kind of activity, and closing this loophole would be a great asset to our community and help stem the tide of that activity. So I appreciate the council's support for the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Our next speaker, Randy Cooper, followed by Michael Farrell. Good afternoon.
Thank you. This is the first time I have appeared in such a situation. I'm a lifelong resident of Baltimore County. I'm in Mr. Koch's district, although I grew up just above the county line in Annesley. I became associated with Towson University when my mother went to school to get a teaching degree when it was Towson State Teachers, and I was a drag-along kid spending my summers on the clay courts, which are now covered by the Cook Library. I became a landlord when my son decided that he was going to go to Towson and play lacrosse, and he got a full scholarship, and all of a sudden we had a little extra money, and we decided that we would buy one of the houses across from, and it's been an absolute nightmare. I've had the house for 15 years. If it hadn't been the housing crash, I would have gotten rid of it. But what I'm concerned about is the movement that is antagonizing landlords, tenants. The day I pulled up to the house, a woman came and banged on my car door. I hadn't even gotten out, and she said, "We hate you. We don't want you. We'll do anything we can to get rid of you." And that's pretty much the philosophy of a lot of the people. Now, my house is in Berkeley Square, and there are 110 houses there, and 90 of them are rental properties. And so this whole two unrelated people in a house is totally ridiculous. Baltimore County is the outlier in the state. We are the only county that has that rule. Baltimore City doesn't have it. Montgomery County allows 5 people, Howard County unlimited, Anne Arundel unlimited. And we try to be like other people, but we're failing. I look at their sign, equality and liberty. There's no equality. And this bill, it goes too far down the rabbit hole. 2 years ago, they passed the social host thing. Well, that law was copied after a law in Ventura, California. The students under the supervision there were middle schoolers and high schoolers, and yet it was put into play for college people. I would like you to look at the original thing, the whole two unrelated. 95% of the country does not have that rule. I was on a committee, Mr. Marks appointed me, and unfortunately I was the only landlord. Mr. Hartman was on it and about 12 other people. And I tried to tell them about the Bell Terre ruling, and most people didn't even know about it, and it really has no relevance today. Thank you.
Councilman Jones?
Yes, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming here today testifying, and hopefully this will not be your last time. I mean, some people come and testify all the time. So not to make light of what you said, I certainly appreciate your point of view because, you know, I was asking a question when the other gentleman spoke. I was thinking we have this social host, unruly social host act. So my question was, are these people misbehaving, or we just don't want them there because they're there? I mean, I guess that's the issue.
That's what I feel like. They're being targeted because who they are, not what they do. I've run into that bill twice. I've been called into court. Neither one was it appropriate. One time it was in a snowstorm. 2 kids were walking up to my house. One was the brother of a student, and the other was a friend. And they didn't even get their coats off, and the police showed up. And they were the only people there. Everybody else was in bed because they'd been shoveling snow. And I got called into court. And the judge, and she has done this several times, said, that is the stupidest law I have ever seen. And when I explained in the committee about the Bell Terre thing, Mike Ertel, who ran for county councilor he said, we were walking out, he said, it's a bad law. It's probably illegal, but it's the only law we have. Well, why should people have laws to control other people? You know? And if you have a house with 4 bedrooms and you're across from university, are you going to leave them bare? The school has 25,000 students and 3,000 beds. Where's the logic? Where's the rationale behind that? It just doesn't make any sense. Now, I know there are bad people, but you know, in ancient times, hospitality was the most important criteria you could do. These people are our guests, and I know it used to be a commuter school, but this school has national recognition now. We get a bulk of the kids from suburban Washington who don't want to go to College Park because it's too big, but they should go to College Park because they don't have this two-related thing. Salisbury tried to do it, and it was thrown out because they realized that the county didn't have it. Now, I'm old, and I know a lot of people, and you know, another problem that I have is the communication. This was the first indication that I had of this, okay? My first indication of the guest hosting was when the two kids were cited, because nobody sent it. And when I talked to the policemen, they couldn't believe that the landlords hadn't been notified. They have lists, because we get, every 3 years we have to be, you know, they come in and check and everything. But nothing was given to us. It's, you know, if the only reason I read it in the paper is because I read the Sun paper on Mondays to read about the Ravens. Otherwise, I wouldn't have seen it and I wouldn't have been here. But I was on the phone last night, and what a lot of people are going to do, they're going to just give up, and they're going to stop renting to students, and they're going to go to the Section 8 voucher program. So that's what you're going to have in the community. And Mr. Moeller, I'm good friends with him because we were basketball coaches, and when we were walking out of that committee one night, I said, what do you think about this whole rule? Because Mr. Marks and Mr. Moeller went into that committee thinking that it would be nice to have an overlay system like Delaware, that you know, you could have the number of people you have with bedrooms. And just to let you know, William and Mary, University of Kentucky, Amherst, Geneseo, which meant all of New York, SUNY State places, Miami, all of Washington State, Idaho, Oregon, they have none of this, you know. So it's, you know, it's a bill based on a law that's on sand, and it's a horrible thing. So, you know, I don't know. And I talked to a lot of people last night, and they couldn't come today. And there are a lot more people who feel adamant. And, you know, I'm really friends with the guy behind me. And he said, I love the college students. And you guys, and there are about 5 of us who have the houses, and you guys have really, really gotten good people. And, you know, we're not getting trash. I mean, you know, I had one person, and this was many years ago, and they were getting harassed by the neighbors. And the guy said, I'm a big-time New York lawyer. You want to put an end to this? And I said, no, I just want to lay low and just do my thing, you know.
Councilman Patuka, then Jones, then Marks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where do you coach basketball?
Well, I'm retired now. I was at Friends School for 44 years. And that's a lot of, they thought I was out of the twilight zone. But, you know, the Quakers, you know, you have that moment of silence, that's the Quakers. And they have a thing called the Spices, which are as important as ours, and it means simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality, and service. And they live by those principles, and I live by those principles. And so it frosts me when people are not treated that way. It's divisive, and that's...
Well, I coach basketball as well, so if you have any plays that are go-to plays with 10 seconds to go in the game, I'll talk to you about that after the meeting.
I'd love to.
But in regard to this issue, when you first said you've owned the building for 15 years and it's a nightmare, I thought you were going to speak as a proponent of the bill.
No, my
And you're
client,
speaking
my
as an
tenants have been
opponent of the
wonderful.
bill.
I
So
started.
could you describe your tenants? And
Yeah, that group that was the first group that I had. My son, who's a chief resident of surgery at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York. Another guy is a big-time lawyer in Hollywood. Another person works with handicapped autistic children in Howard County. I've had nurses. I've had people who've gone to medical school. Towson is a really good school. And the one thing, I guess it was 10 years ago, that committee could not get through their thick skulls that Towson is a college town. Okay?
And I know that Towson has a community relations department that deals with the surrounding communities. What role do they play in any of this?
They drop off a packet at the beginning of the year. I have said for years that they ought to have a induction program like they do for new students for people that are going to live off campus, because honestly, these people don't know how to write a check, they don't know how to boil water for a hot dog, they don't know how to do the heat or the dishwasher. They really need to have that kind of thing, and maybe have people like, from the committee come in.
I understand.
And it's always been, no, we don't have the money, we don't have the time, whatever. But, 4/5 of the school lives off campus.
Right. And so I'm in a position where I'm looking at 6 different colleges for a good young man who doesn't know how to boil a hot dog, and he's going to go off to college. And each of the colleges that he's looking at, we have a whole packet on housing options and some guidelines on being respectful to the neighbors if you don't live on campus. And I was just curious, I don't know if Councilman Marks, if you have any insight on this, if Towson University is providing guidelines for new students and students that move from on-campus living to off-campus housing, how they should behave with their neighbors, because I think it's important that students be respectful.
They do that, and as a landlord, they send it to me, and I made copies, and they're on the refrigerator door and things like that. But,
do you have any kind of structure for making sure that the students that are living in your residence, that they're following the guidelines or the structure that you've put in place?
Honestly, as a landlord, you want to have as little contact with your tenants as possible. If I got checks and never saw them, I'd be the happiest person in the world. There is the concept here is that Bell-Terre law defined family, and they described it as a biological family. I don't know, do you know the Bell-Terre rule that started this? Bell-Terre was a community on Long Island, North Shore. It was a gated community. The houses at the time, and it was 1974, so it was 45 years ago that the case went to the Supreme Court. A professor was going on sabbatical, so he rented his house to 6 kids, and it was a huge house. The houses then were between $1 million and $3 million. Now they're between $3 million and $6 million. So it wasn't downtown Towson, not to insult, whatever. But, and they made it through the whole year, not a problem. And it was time for the summer, and they were there, and they applied for beach passes because the town is on the beach. And apparently they didn't like some of the people that the tenants brought to the beach. I don't know what the reason was. I haven't been able to find it, but I'm kind of... So anyway, it went to the Supreme Court because this community wanted to have families only. And what the Supreme Court decided is that a incorporated township can make a decision. And Bell-Terre made the decision that they would only have families or people that were too unrelated, and that was the limit. Okay, it was not to be countywide, it was to be in structured towns. Now, I would be happy if my community would have a similar thing. As I said, there are 110 houses and 90 of them are rentals, so they wouldn't buy this. It's just, I know it's difficult, and I know in a lot of areas but trouble, but it has gotten better and better and better. And yet the county council has made rules that are more restrictive and more harsh and for no reason. I mean, in this newspaper, I don't even know what the law says, but in the thing here, it says that one person complained. Now, the problem with legislators at every level, they want to make laws. But you don't have to make a law because one person complained. They can be
Okay.
dealt with.
Thank you. All right, I do appreciate it. I appreciate you coming in, taking the time, and, you
And
know,
I sent the whole progress of the schools
say
that we're,
something, yeah.
we're doing away with it.
I know.
And I gave it to David, and I said, please spread it around. I guess he did not.
and-
Let me address this, and I don't want to get into dialogue.
Right.
It's not a question and answer. You know, when I was elected in 2010, I inherited a real problem. At the time, the enrollment at Towson University was 22,000. By 2015, it was at 23,000. By the time Towson University adopted its master plan, it was going up to 25,000. And the county council wasn't responsible for that. The state of Maryland decided to grow Towson University at that rate. And no one is suggesting that Towson University is nothing but an absolute treasure for Baltimore County. But the way to deal with this is twofold: to increase the amount of beds in and around Towson University, and secondly, it's to adopt measures that do help the neighbors impacted by these issues. And we've made tough decisions. I mean, we passed the resolution that advanced the 101 York project, a very controversial project. I lost that area around Towson University by over 15 points in the last election. I mean, there's a lot of people who still do not like that project, but I think it was the right thing to do because we needed beds around that university. So 101 York is being built. Towson University is building more beds on campus. So we're increasing the supply, but we're also helping the residents. I mean, if for anyone who says that this social host ordinance isn't working, you know, the newspaper totally has reported on the success of that ordinance. In the first year since that was adopted, the complaints went down, I think, by 50%. College Park is actually looking at doing a similar ordinance right now, so that has worked. You know, Mr. Cooper, I sympathize with a lot of what you said. I agreed with you in the past about the idea of reporting things anonymously. But, you know, I also have residents who are really impacted by this enrollment growth and who are saying to us, give us a hand, help us out. And that means a lot to me. But thank you for coming.
Yeah, I just feel we are the ones that are taking the burden. It is the university's fault. It is the state of Maryland that has allowed this school to grow incredibly and without the facilities.
But also they're catching up now. And to the credit of the president of Towson University and the university system, they are building more beds. They're finally catching up. But it's been a rough process.
Yeah, and I suspect, I don't think I'll be around that long, that whole Berkeley Square is going to be turned down and dorms built. And I'm fine with that. I'm a supporter of the school, you know? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking your time to come out today. We do have two more speakers on this. Michael Farrell, followed by David Riley.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Farrell. I live at 1519 Dellsway Road. I am the one who complained. I'm the troublemaker that brings all of us here today. I just want to ditto what Mr. Mulder said, what Mr. Hartman said. They're absolutely correct. That's pretty much exactly what I wanted to say. I respectfully disagree with everything the gentleman before me said. He has a different perspective than me. I've lived in my home for 25 years. I know what goes on. For most of those 25 years, I've been active in code enforcement. I would probably say 85% of my time in code enforcement has been on this issue, okay? It's very difficult to prove, as the inspectors tell me, okay? It's full of loopholes. Property owners try to take advantage of it all the time. I want to see this shut down as much as possible because I am tired of doing this, honestly. No more than 2 or more related persons in a home is a great thing. Don't let him tell you otherwise. I live there, I know. It's perfectly acceptable. Everyone I would ever speak to in my neighborhood would agree to that fact, okay? So now we've got a property owner trying to get around the fact why he's not paying rent, or he's not accepting rent from these tenants, which there's 4 college students at 1506. The fact he's not getting rent is ludicrous. We all know that's just not within the bounds of realism. It's just not, okay? Those 4 have 4 cars. They're comings and goings. You know, it just gets too much. You can't have that many people in that space. There's going to be parking issues. We have a lot of older people with a lot of families that need access to their houses in a reasonable manner. This, over the 25 years I've been there, has always been a problem. And I'm concerned about the legislation just a little bit, although I'm for anything that helps it. It's just adding a lot of words to a section of code that is very onerous, okay? I don't understand why we just can't take out the for compensation stuff in that section of the code and let it be. Compensation, whether the owner's getting it or not, has nothing to do with 2 or more persons in a residence. No more than 2 or more persons in a residence is a lifestyle thing. We are a neighborhood. We are not Towson's off-site housing. I want to make that very clear. Earlier in the year, there were, I can tell you, 4 homes that were for sale. All the 4 of those homes have been sold. They sat empty over the summer, and in September, students moved in, 3, 4, or 5 students. I'm waiting for the outcome of this to get resolved before I launch other code complaints against those. But this is an issue. It's real, and it's happening. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Really, thank you for testifying. I did want to add, we are talking to the county executive's staff and the county attorney about the legislation to make sure it does pass legal muster, and maybe we'll take some of those comments into consideration. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next and final speaker is Mr. David Riley.
My name's Dave Riley. I'm the president of the Knollwood Association. We are a neighborhood of almost 400 homes in southeast Towson, and we are in support of David Marks' proposal to cut another loophole. The first thing I'd like to say is I was here late, so our neighborhood does support the circulator, yeah, so I didn't get on that. So anyway, the neighborhoods of southeast Towson took the brunt of a much-needed expansion of TU University, and they are an economic driver and they have great students, and that's not the debate here. The debate is landlords that come in and exploit the neighborhood as an investment, and that is what this is trying to stop, okay? This is not between the neighborhoods and TU. This is not between the neighborhoods and the students. This is between the community of people who pay taxes against people who come in and try to exploit our neighborhoods. It's that simple, all right? So we heard a gentleman talk about the social host ordinance. That has been the most important tool for the stabilization of the southeast Towson neighborhoods. The data is out there on how effective it is. It's not debatable. I'm a member of the University Relations Committee, and I also serve as an advising board on the Asian Arts Center. So I'm very involved with the school. I'm a graduate of the school. But there has to be tools given to the communities. We talk about the circulator. We talk about everything positive being done in downtown Towson, okay? The neighborhoods that were affected by the expansion are the walkable, most valuable neighborhoods in the area. They're the areas that we should be marketing to young professionals and families as well as college students, because they will not sustain another 10 or 20 years unless a real plan is out there to how we stabilize these neighborhoods that have been affected by TU's expansion. You've got a lot of investment downtown. The neighborhoods that have been affected by the expansion are the ones that are most walkable. The county executive's strategic initiative of walkability. These are the neighborhoods that need to be protected. And ordinances like we're talking about here are just one of the major tactical tools. But we've got to start looking at putting real resources into these neighborhoods so you can sustain them. The landlord who was just here 2 speakers ago talked about how Berkeley Square was now 90 houses rented, like that was some type of an accomplishment. It's not. Balance and stability is what attracts money and investment, okay? When you have a neighborhood that has gone from, 110 homes to 90 rentals, that is not a positive. Okay, that is not a positive. What we need is resources to increase home ownership in that area. That's it. Thank you.
David, thank you for all the good work you've done. You've really done a lot for us, and agree with a lot of your sentiments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley, and thank you for the public speakers and the citizens who come out and
thank you all.
Engage in the process, whether you're for or against it. I'm always very impressed by citizens taking their time out of their busy schedules, come in and really talk and kind of express their views. So I really, really greatly appreciate that. Councilman Marks, did you have anything else you want to say?
No.
You guys okay? I know one thing with UMBC, and I recognize it's different student population, Towson, UMBC a little different, but one thing that does help with UMBC is they have monthly meetings with UMBC and with the students and the community. And when issues bubble up, a lot of times this forum that meets find ways to find solutions and truly try to work together to come up with solutions. That's something I think UMBC does do fairly well. We send a representative all the time to be part of that group. And a lot of times we find that most of the issues can be kind of worked together through common interest, and it's a pretty engaged process.
Yeah, we have that as well. Towson University Relations Committee meets every second Monday of the month during the school year. I go to most of those meetings, or I have a representative, and that has really helped. The dialogue has really helped, and I do want to emphasize the relations have greatly improved over the past 9 years. It's not perfect, but we're making strides. We really are.
That's great. All righty. Well, I think on that note, wish everybody a safe drive home, and thank you all so much for coming out today.